everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today, a weekly podcast exploring the science and culture of the emerging psychedelic field with your hosts Kyle Buller and Joe Moore. Today on the show, we are joined by Jac Harrison. Jac Harrison, born Sean McCormick, is a Grammy-nominated American music producer, studio musician, songwriter, and media personality that is best known for his syndicated radio program, Gear Guys, that ran from January 2009 to October 2017. Jac is also known for his work for developing a mathematical frequentoid-based music that is used as a therapy to treat people with cognitive health issues and PTSD. Jac is also a third-generation performing/recording artist and comes from a lineage of musicians and artists, so it's really awesome. So I kick off this interview with a little bit of background about how Jac and I got connected and why we wanted to sit down and do an interview. But ironically, Jac lives in New Jersey, and I live in New Jersey as well. And we made contact over a Facebook message and talking about near-death experiences and the DMT experience. And Jac has a studio because he's a studio musician at his house, and got to sit down and record this episode at his house, which was really awesome. And thanks, Jac, for also doing some editing on this podcast as well. So in this episode, Jac and I chat about his experience with near-death experience and integrating that experience into music, which is really cool. And also some experiences that he had with psychedelics and DMT, and the work that he's doing with music. And music's a huge part of the psychedelic experience, I feel like, especially when we're doing psychedelic therapy. So it's I think it's a big component within the therapeutic process. And it's also a huge part of breath work. I mean, when we run workshops, music is an essential part. It's one of the core components. So it's really cool to sit down with somebody who understands music and is, exploring the psychedelic and music realm. A little bit interesting of just how Jac has taken his experience and translated it to music. I feel like that is what integration's all about: taking an experience, bringing it down to the body, and doing something with it. And in this episode, you'll hear how Jac took his near-death experience and created a track with it, and found that it was also really helpful for relieving some of his anxiety. Ended up doing some research on it at a university on how this music and the music that he was producing was able to help decrease anxiety and help people get to sleep. And, super interesting how powerful music really is. If you want to check out any of Jac's music, he actually has it up on a website for free. You can check it out at MindToyBox.bandcamp.com. I ended up listening to a track before going to record with him, and we chat a little bit about my experience with that as well. So again, if you want to check out some of the music that we are talking about in this episode, check out MindToyBox.bandcamp, and Jac has it up there for free. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today, everybody. Today we are joined with Jac Harrison. You originally reached out to us on Facebook and then posted in our Facebook group, which kind of just sparked my interest because you said that you had this near-death experience followed by some psychedelic experiences, and really piqued my interest because I have a similar background and story of having a near-death experience and having a pretty profound psychedelic experience that was really on par and really similar to my near-death experience. So I was like, I really want to chat with you. And ironically, you live in New Jersey, so this really worked out, and we're recording live in your studio here, which is pretty awesome.
Hey man, I really appreciate you coming by like this. I gotta be honest, I'm a little bit nervous. I've been an on-air personality for years now, but I've never really spoke about something so personal to me that changed the direction of my life. But I feel like I'm at this point where I need to start telling people what I experienced because I was able to take something from it and help other people as well. Now, I'm a very factual person. When I hear things, I tend not to believe them, and I do my due diligence. With that said, I want to have complete transparency with your listeners. My name is Sean McCormick, professionally known as Jac Harrison in the music community, and this is the story about how my near-death experience was the same experience I received when using DMT. So let's just jump right in. 2008, newly married, had a baby on the way, and I needed a real job. I was working a Mickey Mouse job, making not a lot of money, pursuing music at night, and that just wasn't going to cut it with a new family. So I decided to accept a position at Whole Foods Magazine in a sales capacity, working for just a wonderful human being. It was great. I must have interviewed at 5, maybe 6 different places. And the thing that sold me on it, because I knew I would hate being in a work environment instead of being in a creative environment for the majority of the day, is the people had to be great. I've had anxiety my entire life, diagnosed with PTSD. And I knew I couldn't be in a situation with someone who was just a complete asshole. So I started working for Whole Foods Magazine, and the owner of the company around 2011, 2012, who was the nicest man I think I've ever met, became ill and had to give the company to his daughter. Complete reign, complete control, and she's a fucking asshole. This woman would go out of her way to make people uncomfortable. She would talk down to people, and she just had this chip on her shoulder, and it was ridiculous. So I knew at that point that my life was going to change, because after a month of her truly being in control of the company, my anxiety started to flare back up. At the same time, because I was so comfortable in my work environment and home life was okay for a little bit, I started working in the music community again with writing music, trying to pursue what I wanted to do. And right at that time, I started going through a divorce. It was messy, but I guess I'm just not built for marriage, especially not when I'm dealing with stress. And, there's many factors, obviously, in that. So I decided to really push my music career, and that hints the 2 names. I needed something where if my music career was going to really hit it off, I didn't want my advertisers from Whole Foods Magazine to be able to Google my legitimate name and find things, because I don't think that they would understand. I had this impression that they would think I was half-assing the work I was doing with them if I was moonlighting, doing something in a different industry. So everything was going okay. But the money was pouring in. I had a radio show that was syndicated in 35 markets that was niche for guitar players. Then I started producing music, and my first production album was Musicians Collective Project. And what I was able to do is write all the music. It's a blues album. I sang. I did everything for it except lead guitar. I wanted this to be a community thing. So I got 2 local guys, one being my father, one being Matt Litke, who's a friend of mine, great guitar player here in New Jersey. I then got 2 other studio session guys like myself that you would see playing at a trade show booth, or if, a guitar player became ill and they needed to hire you for a 6-week tour. And that was Eric Schotties and Scott Gaylor. And then I wanted to get someone who had a lot of notoriety with people outside of the industry, because everybody else knows each other in the music community. We all support each other. It's a wonderful thing. But the masses just don't know these people. Tell you the truth, they don't care. So I got Ron Bumblefoot Thal, while he was the lead guitar player of Guns N' Roses, and Bill Leverty, who is the current and original guitar player from Firehouse. And the album did great. So I had money coming in from the radio show. I did an album for charity with some really great musicians that helped the charities that they were dedicated to. I had a full-time job making bank. I don't think I've ever made more money than that, which was just amazing. And everything was kind of going okay on the outside. There was women, there was parties, there was just anything you could possibly imagine. It was just there for me, and it was great, except for my son, which kind of gave me the anxiety. Bad divorce, didn't see my kid. Anxiety. So all the years of bullshit all started adding up, and I was on blood pressure medicine because of it. And on August 22nd, 2017, I took some cold medicine, completely forgot about it, on top of my blood pressure medicine, and decided to share a bottle of wine with a friend. And the next thing I knew is I wound up in an ambulance with some kid pounding on my chest, and learned later that night that I was in and out, and they said that I had died. And I really didn't believe them. I actually got mad and told them to go fuck themselves. Signed myself out of the hospital. The craziest thing was, After I woke up from having this near-death experience, or whatever you want to call it, I felt fucking amazing. No anxiety, no depression, but this only lasted for about 3 weeks. Then everything came on tenfold. It was crippling. I mean, I didn't want to leave my house. The anxiety was so bad. But I needed to be active. I needed to be out of my house. I needed to live my life. So I decided to do a bunch of research. What I learned from it is kind of controversial, but it also helped me develop music that helped people in a sleep study. But we'll come back to that in a little bit. When you have severe PTSD or anxiety or depression, I believe it triggers something in you at a biological level that gives you an insight, or I don't even know how to explain it. You're more aware of your surroundings. I don't believe in ESP. I don't believe in psychics. I don't believe in ghosts. What I do believe in is not comprehending what I was going through and trying to rationalize it. So my birthday, my 39th birthday, I was at a trade show. And at the trade show, I was given tickets to go to a show. My birthday is September 28th. The show is October 1st. I had tickets to go. My boss said I could stay an extra night in Las Vegas. I was staying at Mandalay Bay Hotel. I was running around the trade show floor telling people I thought I was going to die. I didn't know how to not tell people. And I said, maybe my plane's going to crash. I don't know. To the point where my boss was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I got home, and then people got shot right outside the hotel for the Las Vegas shooting. So I believe in coincidence. I don't believe in any of this crap. But that changed my life because I had this overwhelming feeling of anxiety that I shouldn't be there for some reason. But I was given a free room. I was given tickets to a show. And as a musician, there's no reason why I should turn that down. I just decided that it was in my best interest to leave, even though I had this overwhelming feeling of that something really bad was going to happen. And call it, intuition, I guess. I came home and that was on the news. That's probably the most verifiable thing that I've had with intuition. But I strongly believe that when you have PTSD, depression or something, there is something that's in us that's primordial, that we needed at one time. That, hey, there's something chasing us in the wild. Be aware of it. Your cognitive awareness of this animal is here. I believe that happens, and what triggers it is crippling, depression and PTSD. After playing around with things and trying to figure out what it was, I took a 2,000 milligram bar of chocolate and ate it. And I just said, I gotta blast off, man. And I was trying to relive what I actually imagined in my near-death experience. And I could remember it vividly. And the parts that stuck out were frequencies. I never used DMT before that. I had used acid a few times in high school. I'm allergic to mushrooms, so I've never had a psilocybin experience. So I couldn't rationalize it in that sense. I didn't know how to combine the two at that point. But what I did as a musician is I said, I can recreate this. I need to learn about frequencies. I need to know what the hell this is. So I did some research, found out about Dr. Raymond Reif in the 1940s, started studying things that Julian Treasure was talking about with sound, attended a few TED Talks, and figured that I could make music that would emulate my experience on my near death, and it would bring me back to where I needed to be. And I did an album called Relief, was the first one. Relief is a 3-part album. The first one, the track Relief, which is 33 minutes, is what I experienced when I died. Everything else written after that is how I eventually cataloged my DMT experiences so I could remember them because it helped. So now that I had this audio file and it was just frequencies, I had contacted a few friends that I know that have studios, and they had yogis. I got yogis together. We went to a store that had singing bowls. I recorded it, got everything square. Started building the frequencies, and I said, no one is going to sit through this, but it's helping me. And it did. I listened to it. My anxiety was gone. I said, this is what I heard. These noises took away my anxiety. I had no idea why. So I gave it to a friend. He listened to it. He says, it sounds like shit. I can't sit through this, but I get it. So I wrote music around it. And the way I wrote the music was in different, it's a very, I don't want to say complex method, but I use mathematical equations. and I built the music surrounding the frequencies. And each song that I did catalogs the DMT experience I had, because when that track Relief stopped working, I was going nuts. And I'm a fan of, I listen to podcasts all the time. Like Joe Rogan's a big one I listen to. I think everybody does. And he talked about DMT experience. So I went somewhere where someone could administer ayahuasca. Man, I absolutely hated the experience, but it was the exact same experience that I had when I was in the hospital. Geometric shapes that I couldn't explain, a feeling of well-being, but not being lucid about it. Feeling cold and hot at the same time, hearing crackling, hearing just sounds you just can't explain with words. So I started cataloging my DMT experiences. I didn't do ayahuasca all the time. I would smoke DMT. And each one is a track that brought me to the next point so I can continue to go, and it helped with my anxiety. Since then, I've done tracks with veterans to bring them out of the state that they're in by bringing them back to where they were. There's 4 tracks I did where it was just percussive drums leading into it, and then naturescapes. There's a city sound, and this all had to do with where that person's trauma happened. They told me what they wanted. We built it up, and I used frequencies in there with MDMA for some people and DMT for other people, and broke them of that traumatic experience and allowed them to relate it some other way. So the main reason why I really wanted to have this interview is because I think that there's something really there. That sound can be used as a delivery method for tricking your brain into thinking you're taking a chemical and releasing your natural endorphins to make you just feel better. And I did it a few times, and I want to help as many people as I can, and I don't charge for it.
Yeah, it's amazing, and sound is so powerful. I don't know how much of a background you know about us, but we have we lead breathwork workshops, and a huge part of it is actually the music, creating a container for people to explore. And the sound is really a way to help guide this person's internal journey. So I really appreciate that. And I'm curious, to come back to your near-death experience, if you feel open to exploring it a little bit more. When you say you didn't have a traditional near-death experience, like, what was going on for you at that time? Like, was there like a felt experience that something was happening? Because I feel the same way. Like, when I had my near-death experience, I didn't have the tunnel of light. I definitely had outer body experiences and stuff like that. But I didn't have that whole traditional thing that you hear about, but there was this felt experience that I went somewhere and something changed for me. I didn't know how to describe it. I didn't know how to put it into words. And I was the same way, huge high for like a month or two. I was like, oh my God, I'm alive. But then something started to kind of come back, and I didn't know what it was. And I think that's what bothered me so much, that it felt like I went somewhere, something happened, and I just did not have the language or words for it, where I was just like, what was that? But something changed. And then, the depression and anxiety started to come back in my life. And it was just like, what's going on here?
Yeah, man. I don't have words to explain. And what I meant by traditional is when you go to these groups on social media, or you watch specials on TV to learn about something that happened to you, it kind of paints a picture. And I think a lot of it is, I don't want to call it BS. I want to call it someone's need to explain, and like when a cop leads the witness type deal. This is what is expected. I'm going to rationalize this as that. For me, it really was, it was terrifying. There was a point where obviously I died, but there was a point where I felt like I was dying. And it was one of the most horrible experiences I've been through. And I've been through some pretty nasty shit. But once I broke through that, and I got to a place where I felt like, all right, I'm good with this. I didn't get what some people say, that they didn't want to go back. I didn't even think about it. I really didn't know what was going on. I didn't, at that point, realize that I was even in a hospital. I was just like, okay, I'm here. Where the fuck is here? Right. Geometric shapes. I did not get the visual aspect you get with DMT. But the best way to describe it is old projector TVs. I had one for a while, and it was great. And the light came on that said I needed to change the bulb. I changed the bulb. It was like a whole new experience. There was things that were being projected that I would have never seen. And that's kind of the way I equate the two, is that the natural version of what DMT is doing is leading you towards what I believe you experience at death. And what that is it spiritual? I don't know. I mean, I have theories because I've recently learned, and I've spent 2 years trying to figure this out for myself, that DMT is produced in your liver and your kidneys, I believe your gallbladder, and other organs in your body. And some people think that your pineal gland produces it because of all the ancient people's talking about third eyes or the eye of Horus. I don't believe that's a case. The pineal gland is a limiter, and it regulates all of the feel-good chemicals in your brain. And I believe that when you flood your system, it's not able to stop the amount that would normally come through, and it's giving you that experience that you have when you die, because that trigger goes on and it's protecting your brain from what your body is experiencing. So I don't know if that's an atheist point of view, which I'm not. I don't know. But I do know that I can trigger these chemical reactions in people's body using sound to make them feel that same way.
Yeah. Well, the pineal gland thing is really interesting. When I went to COSM for the DMT, the Spirit Molecule release for the movie, Rick Strassman was there, and he said, this is a hypothesis, and everybody ran with it as truth, that the pineal gland is something that produces the DMT. And it was really interesting because I kind of took that when I read his book and said, oh my God, there's something here. DMT might be this thing that's released when we have near-death experiences, and this is kind of the same chemical, makeup in psilocybin, and I had very similar experiences there. So that's like, I really bought to that. But Dr. David Nichols, he has some really interesting talks. I don't know if you ever watched any of his talks.
I have not.
But he is also trying to maybe, I guess, debunk the DMT near-death experience type of theory that Strassman hypothesized, that all these other things are going on in the brain. And, I guess he would probably take that approach as well. It's interesting, and he has some really valid points there, and it's made me kind of reconsider like what is going on here. But the similar feeling between that tryptamine realm and the death experience for me was very similar, and it sounds like the same for you. Like there's something just so similar there, and that's what got me really interested in this work, was how the hell could I have this experience with mushrooms? And I mean, it seemed so on par with me slowly slipping away and dying. I mean, I couldn't shake that feeling. It was just so, I don't know, just so interesting. So when you reached out and told me that story, I was like, oh wow, here's somebody else that feels the same way about this. And it's just really interesting to find other people that have had near-death experiences and also have had experiences with psychedelics that, kind of feel the same way, that there is some weird type of similarity feeling there.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, I was so convinced that when I took ayahuasca, I was dying and I was screaming, this is exactly what it was like last time I died. And I was yelling that. My buddies were telling me, because I brought some friends, I didn't know what was going on. I went to a place where it was legal for a shaman to do it. I hope he was on the up and up. It seemed sketchy, but I really wanted to try it. And it scared the shit out of me. It was literally the same experience, but just drawn out over hours. I don't recommend anyone using ayahuasca. It's a terrible thing to go through, but when you're done with it, it's great. It's like a surgery of the mind. It's not a fun drug, but it does give a lot of relief. The DMT smoking experience, since it's most I ever got like 25 minutes out of it, that really helped, and that's what got me into the music side of it and cataloging, because I couldn't remember anything of what happened when I was done, except for sound. It was a sound, it was ringing, it was the popping, it was just the knowing that I just felt great. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I was done smoking DMT, when, when I wanted to do the Calm and the Detox album, I sat down, smoked, and had a microphone in front of me, and I hummed the frequency that I was hearing. I then went through the catalog of frequencies that I had, and I just started building them up, and then I started writing music around it. Plus, I embedded other frequencies that... this was all done in a case study at a university who's now separated their ties from me because of my belief in psychedelics and the fact that they don't want to do this. They made me pull white papers down from my website. The website's down now. I have to go and put it back up in a different fashion. I originally wanted to do the website for psychedelics to teach people about the benefits of using it and my personal experience. I was told I couldn't, and I did it in a very... I think it was a distasteful way of, hey, this is music that can help you sleep, and not really explaining it. So I'm kind of glad it went that way.
So were you open about, like, I've taken these psychedelic experiences and have infused them in the music, and that's when they kind of pulled back? Or did they know that before going in?
No. Well, they didn't know it because I didn't know at the time.
Right.
I did the first album, and I said, man, this is really helping me sleep, because the first one, there was no DMT involved, the Relief album, and you can hear the difference in the frequencies and just everything that was heard. It's the album that is, it's completely different than the other ones. The following, after I realized that worked, and I did a sleep study with 300 people in a controlled environment. 150 people had the music without frequencies, 150 had it with. Plus, I did 2 Facebook groups and did that as like just a little extra to see, if this would really work. And across the board, it's about 70% of people, with PTSD. Children fall asleep with it. And so that one cataloged basically me dying, which is kind of morbid sounding, but it is what it is. The other ones cataloged a DMT experience, but I didn't feel that it was enough. So I was thinking, what chemicals could be released during this? So detox is, I took opium and found out the frequencies it vibrates at. Then I took the mass-produced #1 opioid that's out on the market, oxycodone, found out what the raw materials were besides opium, the percentages that they were, the percentages that they were to each other, and on a time release, and wrote a mathematical equation. So the frequencies were hitting you the exact same way as if you took a pill and digested it. It works. Now, I don't know if it works because of that, or the frequencies together just make something that's very relaxing. But I gave that to a bunch of people in another Facebook group who are addicted to heroin. And they said that when they decided to detox, that helped them get through it, because they had tried so many times. But when they felt that urge to, pick up a needle or do whatever they did, pop a pill, that took it away. So I think that it may hit the same receptors that opioids do.
Right. It reminds me, I remember when I got into binaural beats like years and years ago, there was a well-known company called iDoser, and said they would rig people up with some sort of like brain scan thing, or just track the brain waves. And, they would, track somebody that was on peyote. That was like one of my favorite tracks. And then they would take that brain wave and then convert it into a frequency. And that's what the iDoser was. It was the like binaural beat was transforming the brainwave into some sort of sound or music. And I don't know, when you're talking about it, it's just sounding very similar.
Well, the university that I was working with to do this, and again, I wasn't working with them. Someone had given me a grant to go and do the research and allowed me to use the university's facilities. I just want to make that clear. I don't want to get sued.
I was going to ask, how'd you get involved in that?
I had a lot of friends in the music industry, and a lot of people connected me through different people. And I spent probably a good, 3 weeks solid on the phone, just going and going and going, and said, I wrote this. I need to get this out there. Let's do it. We hooked a child up to a CT scan, and it was triggering the same responses as the medication. So that's how I know that works. That when he was completely autistic, never really spoke, had all types of neurological problems, and his medication was the only thing that kind of held him together. This poor child was just a mess. So the track Calm completely lit up his brain the exact same way as when he took his medication. And that's what it was, pretty much based off of. But it works, I don't know I kind of feel like an idiot saying, I don't know, but I don't fucking know, right?
Right.
I wish I could explain it to people. The music is free. I stream it for free online. If, people want to donate so I could do more, they can. But it helps people. And I know what it's like to have those nights where you get a panic attack for no reason because maybe you heard something on TV that reminded you of something, or, you're overworked and your boss is just doing everything they can to make your life a living hell, but you have this condition that is accepted in modern society, but it is not acceptable by most employers as a reason for not accomplishing what you need to get done. And that sucks. And I refuse to use drugs. I won't take anything, even a Tylenol, unless I absolutely need to. The only thing I take is plant-based medicines. So cannabis, absolutely. Plant-based medicine, I smoke a little bit every single morning, and that's it. I take acid once in a while. I tried microdosing. That totally destroyed me. Not very good if you have PTSD.
Why not? This is such a hot topic right now. And
I'm so anxious, man.
Anxious. Okay.
I got a lot of work done. I'm telling you, it's like you could just see, what you need to get done before you get done. It's amazing. Totally different experience from macrodosing. No visuals, no real behavioral problems, no lost in your own thoughts at times for hours. It makes you really, really sharp. Almost if you were to take a fistful of ephedra type deal. Just on the ball, 100%. But anxiety, it just makes your heart go a little bit, and that was too much. And I can't take mushrooms, which really sucks. So my choice when I need to get there is DMT, which I haven't had to use probably 4 months. I did ayahuasca not too long ago. I do every year now. I'm going to do just a reset, and I hate it, but it seems to hold my life together.
Right. Yeah. And holding your life in together, that you're able to process maybe what's going on internally, or just being able to purge what's going on.
It's the way you feel after a first date when you get lucky, it's, I don't know how to explain it. You feel really confident and really good about yourself, opposed to feeling like shit and not knowing why.
Right.
And just feeling like the weight of the world is on your chest. It's just it's a very bizarre feeling if you don't have diagnosed PTSD. CPTSD, I think it's called, is another version of it that is not through actual trauma. And I believe this helps as well. Some of the people that I had worked with did have that. But I tend to work mostly with veterans because I knew if they had PTSD or not, because they went to a doctor, they got discharged from the Army. I was working with a guy who lost both of his legs, man.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. And that's the one that we did a cityscape. He lived in Brooklyn. So I went out to Brooklyn and I just recorded his block. I came back, I embedded it in the track, and we sat down and he picked out the frequencies we thought were good. He did DMT, had him hum along, matched up more frequencies, and he used it. And it just worked.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. It brought him right back to the spot that he wanted to be, and that was it.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think was helpful there, the DMT or the music? Both.
I don't know. I think DMT is a fantastic plant-based medicine, and I think it's a shame that we have to go out and trust someone who's only in it for monetary gain to get it, unless you're willing to make it yourself and ordering those raw materials online where you can get them anywhere. But if you get them all shipped to your house, the cops are going to show up. So the fact that I have to go out and buy this from someone who's maybe selling crack as well, that's a drug, This shouldn't be a drug. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's interesting that you said you took his cityscapes and infused it with some of these sounds too. And that just makes me think of almost kind of like some sort of exposure therapy, like taking somebody's natural environment. I don't know if he feels fearful in that environment, but just really interesting if you were to find these different frequencies or sounds that were calming and to be able to embed it into their natural environment that they're interacting with. That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, that's what I was going for, man. There was two approaches. One is the one that takes them back to, their happy place, and one that puts them back into where they were. So the ones that put them back into where they were, it was, from a sound library as close to the trauma that he experienced, gunfire, tanks, everything, even the music that was on the radio. We, looked it up, got it done, did that. No frequencies in there, just brought him back. He did the DMT, hummed his frequencies. We started piling everything together and brought him back to where he was. So there's frequencies that triggered, somewhat of a feeling. We got it into a place where he felt comfortable.
So that's interesting. The person is humming whatever they're feeling and experiencing, and you're recording that.
Yeah, I'm just recording with a microphone.
And then, wow.
Yeah, and then I try to match up the frequencies as close as possible to what they were humming. And then it's not just one frequency.
Right.
So if we're using frequency A, or that's a bad example, if I'm using frequency B, A and C would accompany it. And I would, do a fade so they just blend together, because I don't know what he's actually humming. Most people can't hum in key. Right. So it's close, but then we manipulate it. And, it seemed to work.
Yeah. That's just a really fascinating idea to bring. You're actually bringing back something in a sense. Like this experience is happening to this person and they're expressing it, and then you're capturing it and then kind of reintroducing it later on in some way. And that, to me, I don't know, it just is a really interesting experience. I don't know. It's a really interesting kind of like integration type thing.
I would have never thought to do that until I had that experience. All right, folks, so I just had to go answer my door because there was 2 young women dressed in next to nothing trying to switch my utility company. Sorry about that pause. So where were we?
We were talking about the bringing back these frequencies or recording the frequencies of the person is experiencing or humming during their DMT experience. And yeah, I don't know, just really fascinating.
Cool.
To think about.
The fella that gave me the idea for that is, I don't want to say his name because I didn't get permission, but he was a combat guy. He saw a bunch of stuff he shouldn't have seen. He actually didn't get physically hurt. He just saw everybody around him die, and he just was reliving that and reliving that and reliving that. And he kept saying, every night I fall asleep, this is what I see. So I was like, you know what? Let's tackle it together. We had a great relationship. I said, if you trust me, smoke DMT, hum along. Let's, get you into that state that you're there. Talk to me, describe it. We built it up to sound like it. And while he was there, man, he was really, really reliving it. It was crazy. And then we started building the track after that. So it just took him away from it. And he hasn't had any problems. It's a way to correct it. If memories are a gateway to our past, and it sounds ridiculous, and it's not physical, and I don't want anybody to think you can actually travel back in time, because that's not what I mean. Your mind is a bitch, and she is, man. Yeah. She's control of your entire body and your entire emotions. That if you can lock onto a memory and disassociate it with something and reassociate it with something else, every time you go back to that memory, you can I don't want to say deal with it, but you can relive it in a way that it's tolerable. And I think that's how people get over things, not by masking the pain, not by taking fistful of pills and acting like a zombie. No one wants to be a shell of who they are, but they want to get out and do normal life shit. Yeah. And without, I think without this, I wouldn't be able to function, that I wouldn't have been able to carry on the way that I was, that I would have been institutionalized. That I was at the point where I would come home as a grown man, 40 years old, and fucking cry and be like, man, the world sucks today. And it was just a way for me to use, I guess, my ability to communicate. Right. Like Alex Gray paints.
Right. You have music.
Yeah, mine's music. So I was able to capture that. And maybe Alex Gray has the same thing. Maybe when he paints because his ability to see things differently, he can see in his paintings things that make him happy. Right. And with music, other people get to enjoy it more so in the same way as the artist, I think, as long as you can relate it. Right. Opposed to visual arts.
Yeah. It's interesting. I did listen to your detox track. That was the one you recommended. And I was laying down, I was meditating. And at first I was like, this is weird. Like I think the first part, it seemed like it would, it wasn't always like a full resolution. I feel like it stopped and then repeated. I don't know if that was like intentional or what was going on. Yeah, well, you told me that, and so I was like, okay, maybe this is just part of the mathematical equation. Maybe that's why it's doing it. And I found for the first like 5 or so minutes, I was like, what's going on here? But then something shifted. Like it went from irritation to this is really curious. And I had this really interesting experience of like kind of going into these memories that I had and kind of like rearranging things. And I felt like a total 180 with my mood and affect. Like I just went from like a little like, just like fatigued and tired to boom, I was like feeling a little bit more happier. And it was really interesting that this thing where I was like, what's going on here? I feel like this isn't really working, or why is it doing this thing where it feels like it just is about to resolve itself, but then it stops and starts over again. Absolutely. And then it just, something shifted in me, and I had this like really interesting meditative experience with it, and I was like, wow, there's really something interesting here with the music.
Yeah, well, each track is written in it's between 4 and 7 song compositions together, and each one is separated into separate parts inside of itself. So, for example, Detox, the first few minutes is one chord progression and frequencies, then it goes to another one that combine themselves, because each one of those tracks was a different experience going into that same, I don't want to say memory, but the same experience with smoking DMT. I would literally smoke it, put it down, hum, stop, and then do it again. And I'd do like 10, 15 times. And then when I had all the frequencies, I'd lay it out and then build the music around it. So the choppiness of the first one and also the last tracks are always choppy, because if you were to take a pill, it would need to dissolve. Part of that dissolving process is I had a doctor give me the full layout based on body mass index, weight, and how your body processes based on how much you take. And it would trigger the exact same things. It's not a pleasant experience for your stomach, so it can't be a pleasant experience for you. But all the other ones, the frequencies that make you feel good, I don't think are the frequencies that I experienced. Those kind of guide you and make you relaxed. But the frequencies that are in there are the ones that trigger, dopamine. I believe trigger DMT, but not from your head, but from your lungs, from your kidneys, from all those other places, and gives you that sense, that euphoric sense, helps you fall asleep. If you smoke pot with this, man, it just blasts you off, though. It's a kind of weird experience that if you smoke or you take a 500 milligram edible with this, and even the first track, Relief, you just go somewhere else by the end of it. Just close back headphones. I mixed and mastered it so you can play it as loud as you want, and the frequencies will not harm your ears. It doesn't get above like 92 decibels equivalent in closed back headphones. And it just, you'll go flying. If you use it when you do DMT, I don't recommend it, but it makes your DMT experience longer. But it allows you to catalog it. And that's what I really want to get into with people, is I want to catalog their experience so they can move past this. Because I truly believe that DMT or even MDMA, even though they're totally different, can cure people of these diseases. They're not even diseases, they're wounds. It's making your brain fire a different way when you're listening to it, the same way as if you were to take a pill.
Right. I just had this thought. It's like you should create a bunch of these tracks and send them into some of these studies, and maybe do a music study with the psychedelics, because I think Johns Hopkins, they use the same music playlists. And then there's another guy, Mendel Kalin, who is really composing different music for psychedelic trips.
Really?
He's got this website called Wave Path, so you should check it out.
Absolutely.
But yeah, music is, I'm going to return to that statement. Music is such a huge part of the experience at times to help guide some of these experiences. And I don't know, from my experience, like if I did breath work without the music, like, you can definitely get catharsis and go to these states, but there's something that triggers different emotional responses with music. And it really, I don't know. It really just puts an interesting container for the experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, music is my life, so I tend to go overboard with music all the time. And there's some people that I know that music doesn't matter to them at all. But they will, the people that music didn't matter at all, this worked the exact same way. Mm-hmm. There's a place in Italy called, in Malta, called the Hypogeum. And the last track that I did, I took a limestone block that we had tuned to 110 hertz because that's what Malta was. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Well, it's an ancient megalithic structure that they call the oracle chamber, where there's a low resonant frequency naturally within the rock. And they believe people used to go there and heal people, and the low frequency would help with recovery. So I took the flat monitors, put them in this box that we built that was resonated 110, put the mic in, and that was a final recording. So you had that buried in there as well. And that's on the track Transcendence. And that track is not a DMT track. I used Raymond Reif's frequencies in there just to pay him respect. Because if you don't know who Dr. Raymond Reif is, folks listening, Google that guy. He beat cancer using frequencies in the 30s and 40s. Brilliant guy. He gave us the microscope. That's what he's really known for. But his work, for some reason, is overlooked now. Kind of like Tesla's work was overlooked in the earlier part of the 19th and 20th century, rather.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, I consider myself a modest person, so I don't want to say, hey, this shit works. It's,
right.
Great. This came out of my experience, because that's just not who I am. And that's why I've really waited so long to actually say something. And I want people to use it. I don't want the notoriety from it. I don't want any of that crap. What I'd really like to do is teach people how to do it. Because if you're not going to someone to get drugs for something you don't need to have drugs for, we're going to be better as a society. I am convinced that 90% of our problems is due to people being over-medicated because the shit that's happening makes no sense. And the pharmaceutical companies are just making bank. So if we can solve our problems by using plant-based medicines and music therapy, frequencies, we'd be better off, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I'm curious to come back to a little bit to your near-death and psychedelic experiences. Like, have you developed any sort of vocabulary or know how to put language to the similarities between them? Like, have you
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like an idiot, but I'll try. Both experiences, the exact same feeling. I felt like I was crackling. I was fighting the urge to reach whatever it was pulling me towards, which I thought was death. So I was fighting, but hearing crackling, hearing this loud, it was just a loud frequency that it was just unreal.
Get this loud hum.
Yeah, it was I felt it like when you feel bass in a car.
Right.
And it just, I can't really say besides geometric shapes. I mean, my vision obviously was impaired. I don't know if my eyes were open or closed. I just know that I was struggling. And once I hit a certain point, it just popped, and that was it. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm all right. And then after that, I came to. In a psychedelic experience, I just kept going. And every time that I keep going and I document it and I'd listen to it, I would be able to go a little bit further. Like I would pick up where I last left off. So if I was going to go smoke DMT, I would listen to the track a few times beforehand.
Okay,
and then I'd smoke DMT and I'd go right back to where I left off at. And I'd feel like I was gaining a little bit more, not like knowledge, like, I didn't come out and all of a sudden there's a new type of light bulb.
Right.
But
maybe one day.
Exactly. Right. I felt better. And that was my entire intent is I don't want to take over-the-counter drugs. My entire childhood, I was just completely medicated because that's what they did in the early 90s. Kid's a little bit hyper, give him a drug. Kid can't focus, give him a drug. Now he's too tired because we're on a drug, give him another drug. Kind of fucked me up for a while.
Right.
And I didn't want to have that experience again. So it was, if this didn't work, I didn't know what the hell would. Right.
And you might have mentioned this earlier. How did you come across experimenting with psychedelics?
I was looking for cures to treat really bad crippling anxiety. I mean, it was so bad. There's a guy, his name is Jeremy. Hey, Jeremy, I hope you hear this. He used to come to all my shows. His son's a guitar player. I hooked him up with some gear. And he's a great guy. He named his kid after me.
Oh, nice.
Right? I was so honored. Like he came to a guitar show that I was playing guitar at a booth for Indigo Amps. And he told me this. I was like, this is amazing. But I had such crippling anxiety. I couldn't leave the house to go, I haven't met his son yet. I mean, I feel terrible about it. But at that time when he told me, it was just, I gave him a bullshit excuse. I didn't want to say, hey man, I'm going to go home. I'm going to, lock myself in my room and I'm just going to be fucking miserable. That's just, how it is. I mean, hearing me say this shit, I mean, it's terrible what I had to tell people, but I was ashamed and embarrassed that I couldn't control how I perceived my surroundings for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's really tough. And I'm glad that you're able to find a way out of that, or at least find things that have been helping you with that, I guess I should say. Maybe not a way out of it, but a way to, I guess, work with it a little bit differently.
Well, what made me do it is I got bad news for my health again. And I'm like, you know what? I went 2 years. This has helped me. I'm going to spend the rest of my time promoting this, giving it away for free, teaching people for free how to do this, because I don't want people to suffer like, I've barely suffered compared to anybody. There's so many people out there with such worse situations that even if they had the ability and knowledge of music, couldn't do this because it's so overwhelming. I want to help those people. I don't think it's fair that they're overlooked, and that's why I'm doing this. So, we all go through personal struggles, and it makes us who we are. My personal struggles had led me to a point where I needed to remove myself from everyone, focus on finishing this, and giving people the opportunity to have an alternative method of, I don't even want to call it therapy because then it becomes something it's not, but a way to make them feel better about who they are.
Right. And are you still producing music for that type of project, or do you listen to it daily?
I listen to my tracks daily. Right now, I can't do an album right after one because they're too similar.
Right.
I have to wait to find out what didn't work with the last one for me to leave off of. And I don't have anxiety anymore.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I'm working on another project right now. It's a Grammy project where I developed regular pop and hip hop music that was written in the style of 1920s. I have a whole slew of artists that I'm working with. I wrote everything, and we're working on that. But for this side of things, no. And I probably won't unless I need to, or if someone reaches out and says, this is my situation. If I have a reason to go and work, I will. But I think for me personally, I may have done everything I needed to do to reset my brain correctly. Right. And like I said, once a year, ayahuasca. I just did it 2 weekends ago. I went to a cabin without power, and I can't say where it is because it's not legal to take it there. But I had to tell my boss I was going fishing.
Fishing to reset.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I come back, new attitude. But yeah, man. So I'm hoping that in your community and any other, community that's going to be listening to this, because I'm doing a series of podcasts. Yours is the first one that I'm doing. I just thought it was the best fit. The near-death experience people kind of creep me out.
Why is that?
I probably shouldn't have said that, but...
Well, no, I'm curious because I actually haven't gotten too involved in the near-death community. I found more of a community in the psychedelic community, and it's just interesting. Like, I was just on a conference page for near-death experiences. It's like, I've had this experience. I've done a lot of research in it, but it's just so interesting. I've never really gotten involved in that community. And so, I don't know, I'm just curious, like, what...
I don't have much involvement, but it seems very Me Too-ish. Like, it took me a long time to even talk about this. And I haven't told anybody this story. No one. You're the first person I'm telling this to.
Thank you.
Well, no, I appreciate I appreciate you giving me an avenue to actually talk about this. But it was very... hey, that's like mine, but my experience was better. Or I did this, I got out of my body. I'm like, man, I don't believe any of this shit. I don't believe they're in it to help themselves or other people for the majority. I think there's a few real situations. And then there's a lot of depressed people that just want the attention. I use a fake name for music. church and state, between work and work.
Right.
And I don't care if I get credit for it. What I care about is helping people.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. Because, I mean, it fucking sucks when you can't get out of bed on a beautiful day, you know?
Yeah. It's terrible. I've been there before.
Oh, yeah.
It's not easy.
Well, the next thing I'm hoping to do is I believe that psychedelics can help reset people with early onset dementia or even Alzheimer's. There
is some research coming out in the ayahuasca world about that.
Yeah. I read a compelling article that, I want to say that it was a Brazilian doctor. I'll have to send it.
I think some of the Alzheimer's stuff is coming out of Brazil, or at least South America.
Yeah, it was amazing. But his theory was, and I agree with it, is that Alzheimer's, dementia, early onset, whatever it may be, is not a neurological problem. It's a perception problem. That you are unable to distinguish between your memories and now, which is clearly obvious when people talk. But you also get the visual aspect of it as well. That, my grandmother passed away from dementia. My father has dementia. That's pretty recent. But to me, it makes sense that having experienced ayahuasca and knowing that flood of information and not being able to distinguish between what is real and what is not for a good period of time, but allowing it to reset at the end. And it feels like that gateway. You reset the limiter of the chemicals your body's normally naturally produces to your brain. And I'm really hoping that, there's people out there that are much smarter than I am that can figure that shit out, and get even if it's moments of clarity for people going through something like that they know that, okay, if I drink this at 3:00 between 5 and 7, I'm me. That's a huge deal. And I really don't know how to, push that. And I want to push that. I want to push that to people that don't understand, that I want them to understand, like the lawmakers and people like that. And I'm trying to put something together now to go out and lobby, and hopefully that'll be the next journey in this. But
lobby for psychedelic research and medicine.
Psychedelic research for medicine to treat PTSD, CPTSD, I'm probably saying that wrong, Alzheimer's, dementia, early onset, cognitive health problems.
Right.
The only difference between what I've used illegally and what is used legally is the fact that someone's manufacturing it. I can go grow stuff in my backyard, pull it off, and then use it. I mean, hell, mugwort, sailor's tobaccos, has natural DMT in it with an MAOI inhibitor. But it's such a small amount, you don't get anything from it unless you mix a few other things in it. And I buy herbs from Star West Botanicals all the time. Like, I smoke herbs nonstop, and not the herb, not pot. I use it as medicine. Mm-hmm. So red clove to treat bronchitis, things like that. Ancient Native American techniques of treating. And it just seems to work a lot better than the modern shit. So there's no reason why this shouldn't.
Right. Yeah, and, fingers crossed, MAPS is doing some really great work. Hopefully MDMA will be legalized soon for therapeutic use for PTSD. I mean, we're getting close. 10 years ago, I didn't know it would be hitting this quick when I first started getting into all this research and this work. And it's really has been accelerating over the past few years, it's really exciting. So I guess we all just have to keep doing our part, sharing our stories, and letting other people know about how these substances have really affected our lives in mostly positive ways in a sense, right? And they're not typically substances that you abuse, right?
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people doing it are searching for healing and using it for personal growth and development.
Yeah, everything that's out there, and I'll say almost anything, because I just laugh when I say there's no use for crack. There really isn't. But every other drug, there's a use for it. And if you use it in a medical environment, it's prescribed by a physician, there's no reason why you shouldn't have the option of using something that the crap they make in a lab is trying to emulate. I want the real source. We come from nature. I'm not a hippie in any sense, but you got to look at reality. Evolution brought us to where we are. We are made of the same thing as everything else. If the earth gives us something for our body, we should be able to take that at the same time we take modern medicine. Mm-hmm. Modern medicine is a miracle. There's a lot of things that you just can't get from nature. But when it comes to things for the delicate parts of the body, like the brain, I think that you should have the right to go out back and pick a mushroom or take some bark off a tree, and use that, opposed to having something that can really, really mess you up.
Yeah. Makes me think I was doing some like plant medicine studying with a woman named Jac Harrison. A lot of people in the psychedelic community might know who she is. But she said, the people that are almost the best at integrative medicine are some of the indigenous people. They really appreciate antibiotics and Western medicine, but they also use their herbs and their plant medicines. And there is a place for both, right? It's just having the availability and the choice to choose between what you might want to do and your narrative behind these medicines. And it makes me think about this quote. We had a gentleman on named James Casey. He was a vet that went through the MAP study for MDMA. And, this quote just always kind of stuck with me. He's like, it's terrible. I'm so afraid I'm going to get the call from another brother that he lost his life. And if anybody in my community went off to do the same kind of treatment that I did legally through the studies, they could be sitting in a prison behind a cage for just trying to help themselves. And it's like, what other options are there? Some people are really struggling with like high suicide ideation. They're struggling with PTSD, right? And it's like,
oh yeah. Is that? I think I just saw a TED Talk on that not too long ago. Does he work in Cameroon now?
No, I don't know what he's doing. He's a younger guy, and
there was a guy that was in the MAP studies that wasn't harmed, but he had a problem dealing with what happened to his buddies over there, and he was treated. Guy's name escaping me now. The founder of MAPS,
Rick Dublin.
Yes, he gave a TED Talk about it, and he talked about this guy that he cured one day, boom, light, just like that. It took a few times, and bam. Yep. Never needed anything again. Didn't need the painkillers he was on, which he, openly admitted at that point that he was using them to mask the pain, the emotional pain, not physical. And he went and worked in, I believe it's Cameroon rainforest or one of those, helping people for the rest of his life after 1 or 2 MDMA studies.
I'm wondering if it's Tony Macy.
Not sure. I saw it maybe 3-4 weeks ago. It's a recent TED Talk.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I should watch it. I'm surprised I didn't watch that TED Talk. But he was another person that went through the study, and he's been pretty open about his experiences. I know there were some Vice articles written about him, but I think he is over in Cambodia.
Maybe that's where it is.
Southeast Asia somewhere, and he's got a really interesting project that he's working on. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he came up he was a guest when I was teaching this history of psychedelics course, and he was telling me about this idea of going over to Asia to teach people skills to rebuild communities. And I was just like, that's awesome. And it just shows like the integration work, right? You have somebody with all these kind of skills and really going back out into the community and doing something, kind of like what you're doing. Like you're taking your experience, embodying it, and then synthesizing something like this music and then sharing it with everybody. I mean, that is the integration work.
I don't think it's close to that at all, man.
Well, no, but just, yeah. But I'm just saying,
some old fat guy in a recording studio.
Taking the experiences and doing something with it. That's the important part about it.
Absolutely.
Is what I'm trying to highlight.
There you go. Yeah. There's so many remarkable stories, and it really is a shame. And you guys, you're doing phenomenal work with getting the word out there. And
thanks.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to happen next.
I think we all are. It's an interesting time to be interested in this topic and in the community, and I don't know what's going to happen in the next few years. I mean, places are starting to decriminalize plant medicines, like Oakland just decriminalized all plant medicines. There's an initiative in Oregon. They're trying to make psilocybin therapy legal. And, there's a lot of other, little states and communities that want to move towards decriminalization. And what is that going to do if that starts to really take off?
I think it would be absolutely amazing. Our culture would be so much better off if you had to go somewhere to pick up your medicine. You can use it while you're there if you needed to do what you need to do. I don't frown upon anybody for doing anything, even if it's harmful to themselves. Harmful to someone else, that's when I got a problem with that. But if you're doing something that's considered through the eyes of the law or whatever, harmful to yourself, it's your body. Do it what you wish. It's none of my business. You know, if you want to sit at home all day and smoke pot all day and just be a drain on society, shit, do it. I use mine as medicine. I use mine to take care of some, issues that I have, and it really helps me. And I don't overuse it. And I think that's the problem, that because it's not regulated, and I know a lot of people may frown upon saying, oh, regulated, we don't want it regulated. But hey, if I want 25 milligrams, it better be 25 milligrams, because I don't want to use too much and then build up too much of a tolerance. I don't want to overdose. I want to make sure it's exactly what I'm getting. That if opium was just in its raw form and it was pure and people went to a pharmacist to get it, no one would really die, because they would know based on your body weight and who you are, what you can handle, and how much to prescribe you. And who cares if they're addicted to it? Shit. I was addicted to cigarettes. I smoked from the time I was 8 years old until I was 30, right? Just like that stopped. You know, once in a while, I'll hit a blue pen when I feel the urge, but hey, you know, it's my body. I do with it what I wish. You can kick a habit if it's the right dose and you're not overindulging.
Right. Yeah. This is kind of I guess a random question of what we've been talking about, but I'm curious, I think you mentioned the way that you're reviewing this stuff was kind of atheistic. Having this near-death experience and some of these psychedelic experiences, has your spirituality shifted at all?
Yeah. And I don't want to say that I believe in a God. What I believe in is this. I believe in there's a lot of things I don't understand. There's a lot of things that when you look at advanced mathematics, the direction we're going, particle physics, the direction we're going just overall, a lot of things are intertwining. And I think organized religion is not spirituality. I think it's people throughout history that had these wonderful experiences that some people have experienced and put their interpretation on it and built up a following around that. Because, hell, if they smoked DMT or if they had ayahuasca and they spoke to God, some people say they spoke to God, and they were telling people this, they would have no reason not to believe them. And I think that has been, misconstrued throughout time, that the spirituality of who we are as people, and we have something clicks us on. I mean, we're sloppy batteries, man, and there's something that's keeping us going. And what that is, I do believe we're all connected in some way. Intuition is a great way to do it. I mean, you can watch birds fly. They fly in patterns. There's no batteries in them. They're not remote controlled. They're a living, breathing being. And there's no reason to think that we don't have those same abilities as they do. But we're just maybe a little bit further along in evolution. We don't use them as much as we used to. But yeah, this is it's a weird conversation to talk about spirituality and God, because I don't want to offend people, because I believe a person is who they are based off of a few things, and their belief structure and what they think comes next makes them up to be who they are. So anybody, any religion, I respect what you do. But for me, I can't get behind a lot of these religions because of the cruelty they are to certain people, the way that they hide things now. I'll just come out and say Catholicism. They have a goddamn chart, man. God, I said goddamn talking about spirituality. They have a chart which they pay out people that they've molested. And I know that because a woman that I work with, brother went through it, and during the settlement, she was showing the chart. It's like a touch field chart equals cash. So if your organization has that, I think you've lost touch with the spirituality that brought people together. And it's a real shame, because people in communities do need to be able to go somewhere if they choose to worship.
Yeah.
But for me, my temple is on the side of my head.
Right.
That's it. That's as far as I go with religion. It's more of I don't need someone to tell me how to be moral.
Right.
I set my own moral compass, and I believe that the standards that I've set for myself are the standards that I would expect other people to be around me with. And I'm happy with it.
Right.
I don't know if that's too political in the way it's spoken. Okay.
And I want to go back to that situation that happened in Las Vegas. Did you ever have any like intuitive downloads before?
No.
Like, so this was something completely new that
This
just like...
So, dude, I got to tell you, man. So the day we get there, I felt just uneasy. And it was Supply Side West, 2017. Google away, people. Whole Foods magazine. I was the advertising sales manager for almost 11 years. So my job was to schmooze people, just take them out places. So I was constantly taking them out to dinners and breakfasts and brunch and shows and everything. So these tickets came my way. I'm like, wow, this is great. But as soon as I got them, I got this gut-wrenching feeling like, this doesn't feel right. Like, for the first day, I'm like, this is a scam. I'm going to get there. They're going to charge me. I don't want to bring my clients because if I do, then I got to pay for everything. I don't want this. And I started really thinking about it. And the last day of the trade show, I ran around to people and I was clearly, the look on my face must have been horrible. And it was my 39th birthday. So I went to one of my buddy's booths and I'm like, he's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, dude, I had this overwhelming feeling I'm going to die. He's like, did you fucking party last night? I go, no. So I didn't want to explain it to him. He's like, don't tell people that. He goes, when people ask you, make some shit up. And because I have a sick sense of humor, just say something like, you're right, because they won't get it. So I'm just going to tell people I'm fearful. I'm going to die on my birthday in a plane crash. I went out to dinner with that night before we left with the lawyers of the industry because we were the 1 and 2 trade magazine of the industry was the one I worked for and the one that put on the trade show. And it was a huge banquet table of all these important people. And I just said, guys, I don't want to drink. I don't want to do anything. I appreciate it. I'm scared to death I'm going to die tonight. And my boss was like, there's something wrong with you. I go, I know. I'm trying to tell you there's something wrong with me. It was so bad that the people in the industry that were on the plane when we got back to Newark Airport came over to me and said, told you weren't going to die. And then 2 days later, I saw in there, I'm like, this is fucking crazy. So every time I get that feeling now, I go with my gut. If I feel perfectly fine and I was supposed to go out somewhere today and something's telling me not to go, I don't go.
Right.
I've never had anything really like that happen before. But then again, I don't know because there's no record of it. There's no, hey, if I would have gotten in a car accident or something, I just don't know.
Right.
But that only happens during severe PTSD. And I was to the point where I couldn't function at a trade show, and that's not like me at all. I went to a trade show the day my son was supposed to be born, and no one knew. Stone-faced, I'm there for something, I'm going to do it. Inside, I could be dying. It doesn't matter. I couldn't tell enough people. Like, I wanted to warn people, like something was going to happen, but I just didn't know how.
Right.
And it's crazy. The view I had from my hotel, the Mandalay Bay, was the exact same view the shooter had. It's fucking crazy, man. Yeah, it totally destroyed me. And that's when I sat down. I said, something's wrong. And then after I figured it out, it took me 1.5 weeks to write the first album. That was it.
Right.
I put it up on Bandcamp. I sent it out to a bunch of universities so I have some music that I wrote based off mathematical equations, off of frequencies that help people sleep. I didn't go into it. One of them picked it up, said, okay, let's do a study, because I have a little bit of credentials, which I can't really talk about yet. I'm trying to clear everything up because the university that I did the work with is asking me not to talk about it in that context because I'm talking about psychedelics.
Right.
And yeah, it's just what it is. I got to be careful what I say.
Yeah. No, it's totally fine. But it's just really interesting, the intuition piece and the discernment piece. And, if this is something that kind of happened post near-death experience, I just wonder, I don't know
anything to do with near-death, man. I just thought it had to do with anxiety.
Right, but what do these experiences open up to us, internally? And it's like we become a little bit more receptive, and how to really discern between what's actually truth and what's actually not. And I think you're on to that. It's in the gut, right? Because there's these gut reactions. Sometimes they make no sense, And from our culture, if you told somebody that you're crazy, maybe you're paranoid, psychotic, and coming a little bit from my framework, it's like, here's somebody that went through something really traumatic, had this near-death experience, had some psychedelic experiences, opened up, kind of coming from a more kind of spiritual emergence type of framework where you might be a little bit more in tune with something now. And is that really crazy or pathological, or are you just picking up on different frequencies or different, vibrations of some sort? Yeah, that sounds a little hippy dippy, but I
get it.
It's interesting because I've kind of had that really heightened sense of intuition post near-death experience as well. And I feel the same way. I'm like, I'm crazy right now. But then the things unfold and I'm like, okay, there's something there. And I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to put it into words. And I don't even know how to really convey it to people as that anxiety is happening. And I have to think, is this my kind of PTSD as well of like, okay, I had this trauma and I know sometimes I get a little on edge, and is that being activated? Or is there something else that's actually kind of coming through me that's telling me something's going on here, right? And it's a really interesting just kind of conversation or just to think about.
It's beyond bizarre because, I will go on record, and I've had so many times, I don't believe in psychic abilities.
Yeah.
I don't believe the people that say they can talk to spirits. I don't believe it to be real, but I could be very wrong. But for myself at my core, so for me to feel something and not be able to rationalize it, I think it gave me more anxiety.
Right.
But from everything, I read for a good 6 months about, advanced PTSD, mental health issues. I wanted to make sure I wasn't going crazy, completely crazy. We're all a little. But it's just, I believe that we have something in us that is triggered when we are fearful of death. Mm-hmm. That makes us heightened. Our senses are heightened, where maybe, you can pick up on someone's facial expressions, right, or their body language. With this, I had nothing for that.
Right.
I had no way of saying, okay, because I didn't even know what it was. And then when I get back to my house, I never saw the guy in the hotel. He was there the entire time. Did I walk by him? He was 2 floors above me. Did I ride the elevator with him? Is this what gave me that feeling? I don't know. But I believe that, and wholeheartedly, and people make fun of me for this, that if you're pushed to your breaking point, your body sometimes shuts down, and sometimes your body may turn something on that you're not aware of, and give you that extra ability to get the fuck out of Dodge. And I think that's what happens when you push people that have PTSD. And hopefully someday, we could figure that out.
Yeah, I guess that is really well known, especially kind of from the neuroscience somatic point of view, PTSD, these fight or flight responses, and they're survival mechanisms, right? So if that has happened to you in the past, then you're gonna engage in those processes to survive. And so I think it's a totally normal response when you've been through something really traumatic in the past. It's like, oh, there's the programming, tell me to get out of here, or tell me to shut down and freeze, or I need to fight and get out of this situation. But on the other level, it's like there's something else that comes through, and what the hell is that? That's the stuff I don't know. I don't know how to put it into words. I don't know how to explain it, right? And
exactly.
I always go back and forth. Is it this kind of PTSD trigger, or is there something on the subtle energy level where we are picking things up?
I would love to be wrong on all of it. I'd love, I would love to, when I actually die, go to pearly gates and there's a party with, combine all the religions. Give me, 31 virgins and all types of shit. Bring it. I don't think that is the reality that I perceive. So when it is my time to go, I'm probably not going to see that. I've been really trying to rationalize my experiences to the point where I don't even care anymore. Like it happened. I have no way of explaining it. It's completely well documented. And that's what freaks me out. Like I didn't make this up in my mind. Like I've called people and they said, yep, you really were telling us you were going to die. And my old boss, yep, you kept saying it and it was embarrassing and you were running around like an asshole. And afterwards, people, I had one guy say, well, that was fucking weird. I'm like, yep. So it was beyond bizarre.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's a lot of shit we don't know.
Yeah. Reminds me of a story that I had. I was freaking out one night. This was when I was in college. Friends were having like a little party and I had a really bad anxiety attack and said, somebody's going to rob us. And my friend they're all like, dude, you're crazy. Like, just shut up. Nobody's going to rob us. And my one friend was like, Kyle, I think we need to take a walk around the block, like just chill you out. And I'm sitting here just having a full blown anxiety attack, like panic attack, like somebody's going to rob us. And in the morning, I woke up to go to class, and there was a backpack outside and all this stuff. And I was like, I guess it got a little crazy last night. And I get back to my house, and everybody's freaking out. Like, everybody was saying something happened last night, and nobody really knew what happened. And then one of our friends came in. They're like, oh my God, you would never believe this. I woke up at like 4:30, 5 in the morning, and there's this homeless guy standing in our doorway, and he had your backpack and all these stuff. And they're just like, Kyle, you were just like freaking out about this. It's like, I don't know, something just kind of came through me and said this was going to happen. And yeah, it felt manic and crazy during that time, but I didn't know how to explain it. And then when it manifests, you're just like, I don't really know how to explain that. Could have been coincidence, could have been a synchronicity. I don't really know, but
yeah, so weird shit like that happens, and you see it on TV all the time. You hear it on the radio or now podcasts. But I've never experienced it. I've never experienced it with anybody I really know. Like, when you're a kid, you go to a psychic and they read your palm and you're like, it's bullshit. But to actually experience what they claim they're doing, but doing it because you have this overwhelming sense of just something is terrible, is about to happen. And it's going to happen to me unless I get the fuck out of here right now. Right. That's a terrible thing. But I wish there was a way to trigger that without being in that state.
Right.
It would just be cool to study. You get some people,
study intuition.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Like how can we really understand this stuff? Because that stuff even comes through psychedelic experiences. People get like intuitive downloads. How do you make sense of that? Right.
Oh yeah, man. I write some of the best music, just regular music, when I'm out of my mind. If I take a macro dose, if I drop 300 mics, I'll go and play guitar for hours and just plug it in, hit record, and go and get some cool shit. But yeah, just the experiences, man. It's a crazy world we live in.
It is. I don't know how long we've been recording for. Have we been at an hour?
It's over an hour.
Cool. Yeah, usually hours are cutting point. So how can people find you? Or I guess, before we talk about that, is there anything that you want to wrap up with? Anything that you felt like you need to say that you didn't talk about? Any last words of wisdom? Well,
anybody that is truly suffering, and I mean truly suffering, you can contact me through social media, MindToyBox@gmail.com, and I will be more than happy to work with you. We could do it remotely. We can do it here at my place. I can go to your place. We could figure this out. What I'm not looking for is a Me Too situation. I don't want to talk to people about how great they are now with their experiences and, how much. I don't want people to showboat. I just don't got time for that shit. If people are truly suffering, if you're truly lost and you don't want to use medication to do it, or medication isn't working, I will take the little bit of knowledge I have with what worked for me, and I will make something for you, and it will not cost you anything. You just need to allow me to keep it on my website so other people can use it. And that's MindToyBox.com. And the music streams for free, unlimited streaming. Go and listen, put on closed back headphones, and just sit back. If you want to donate, you can. You don't need to. I honestly want people to have a place to go where they can have something different to see if it works for them. And it's worked for a lot of people. And I mean work like they fall asleep. I don't sleep without my music. I could stay up for 3 days and nothing. I'm not tired. I'm not anything. Second I take my music, I just put on the headphones and I go, I'm out. I was dating a woman for a little while whose daughter couldn't sleep unless she played it. I don't know if that's true. She was over encouraging, but that's what she said. I believe it to work. And I want to help other people because I didn't have someone to help me. And I know what I went through. And the 40 years that I've been on this planet, maybe 33, 34 of them were just almost unbearable. And this gave me the opportunity to do it. And I honestly believe that's why I had, I think it was a heart attack. I mean, heart stopped. You know, the cold medicine, the blood pressure medicine, and the wine didn't help.
Right.
I was just a ticking time bomb. And I'm surprised I'm not actually dead from the lifestyle I lived. But it's given me a chance to take a different look at what I was doing and my experiences and how I can now help other people.
Well, I'm glad you made it through and you're here and you're sharing and you're sharing your experience and also sharing your skills and yeah, being able to create things and offer it to other people so that maybe they can find some comfort. Was there a track particular? I know I listened to the Detox and the Relief album. That was really good. And I think I listened to the Transcendent track as well. But anything that you like to start people off with?
Relief.
Relief,
again, is the only track that wasn't used, that I didn't use DMT to get frequencies. It's what I recalled during my experience of dying. It has the traumatic feel to it. It opens with voices, and that's what I remember the siren sounding like in the ambulance. It goes into a very percussive feel because I felt my heart just racing and racing. And then as soon as the second part kicks in with that really bright frequency, that's when I was just gone, man. And the rest of it was, it felt like an eternity, but I was in and out for 20, 25 minutes. 44 seconds was the longest my heart was off, and then it would come on for 2 to 3 beats and then go back up because I wanted to see my chart, and that was pretty much the longest. So it was never more than a minute. I was without a heartbeat, but it was, you know, very, very, very low. Yeah. So that's it, I guess.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story today with us. Really appreciate it. And again, MindToyBox.com?
Yeah, MindToyBox.com. Right now, it's just a Bandcamp page. I had a full website. I guess I made a few claims, and the FDA stepped in, and I don't have the money to go fight the FDA. So there's white papers that I had to take down as well. There's a bunch of stuff, and it's just such a shame. It really fucking pisses me off that it had to happen that way. But I'm going to build a new website. All the old testimonials will go back up there. I just have to be careful with what I say, and I just need to say this is not medicine. If there's a way to trick your brain into thinking that you're taking medicine and you don't, there shouldn't be a reason why anybody gets involved and says don't do it. It's complete and utter horseshit. I should be able to listen to whatever music I want, put on a pair of headphones, and if it works for me, it works for me. But apparently, it may be breaking laws by telling people that. Just don't listen to this while you drive. It does help people sleep.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jac, or Sean.
Whatever you want to call me, man.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Jac Harrison. Really interesting what he's doing, combining music and these non-ordinary states. Definitely check out his website and his music. That's at mindtoybox.bandcamp.com. Again, if you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, share anything around social media, share our content around. We really appreciate it. Love all the support. Thank you, everybody. Any questions, comments, email us, psychedelicstoday, email@gmail.com. And that's about it. So thanks again, everybody, for listening. We really appreciate your support, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Psychedelics Today.